Vulcan checked his club again, thinking maybe his last swing hadn't been strong enough. But then before he could even think twice, the monster swung its massive club once more with a deafening "Ux krrr." Siren and the mage soldiers behind him were instantly destroyed. Jin-Woo watched in horror as this happened. Something inside him just snapped. He gritted his teeth, biting down hard on his lower lip. Before he even realized what he was doing, he sprang into action. In a flash, Jin-Woo was already flying straight at Vulcan. Jin-Woo zoomed through the air, his eyes fixed tightly on Vulcan. Even though Vulcan was as big as a mountain, its head looked more like a small bump compared to its huge body. Jin-Woo twisted his torso mid-flight, his muscles bulging, as he pulled back his arm. With all his strength focused in his clenched fist, he suddenly reappeared. Vulcan noticed him just a moment too late. By then Jin-Woo's fist was already flying straight toward Vulcan's nose. Kaboosh! His punch zoomed in faster than you could blink. Aim! Smashed right into the side of Vulcan's face. Sending the demon stumbling backward, Vulcan tumbled and rolled across the ground, unable to stop itself until it slammed into the crumbling remains of an old building. Tablet, the shaky structure collapsed on top of the demon, with a cloud of dust. Jin-Woo landed gracefully on his feet, staring at Vulcan in shock. How did he manage to knock it down so easily? He glanced at his own fist, still trembling slightly from the punch. It didn't have a single scratch on it, even after hitting such a huge target. A thought popped into his head. Oh, right. He lifted his head, and just like that, the stat window appeared in front of him when he called for it. Here's what it said. Stats: Strength, 15 Stamina, 109 Art, Agility, 13 Intelligence, 10 Art. That's right. He'd gotten assassin-type skills, but his job was mage-type. He'd been forgetting one thing, his strength stat. Strength, 15. Even though he usually poured most of his ability points into intelligence, his strength was almost 1.5 times higher. I really went all out with investing in strength. Plus, his level had exploded recently. Whoa! Here's what happened next. Jin-Woo glanced over at Vulcan, who was pinned under a pile of rubble, and burst out laughing. He hadn't noticed it when he was fighting regular monsters like low and mid-rank demons. But after taking down that boss monster, it hit him. Wow. He had gotten odds, so it's much stronger. He clenched his fist, feeling pumped and exhilarated. Just then, a familiar sound rang out. "So-a-ting, what's up?" Jin-Woo looked around, curious. Vulcan stood up using his club like a cane. Jin-Woo wondered if this was a sign that the monster was waking up. He hadn't expected the system to be so concerned about him. But then Jin-Woo figured out why there had been a warning. Avaricious Vulcan, Lord of the Lower Floors, has used skill. Rage. Up beep, 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 beep. The alerts kept sounding non-stop. Vulcan will stay enraged. All his abilities have increased by 50%. He will feel less pain. Jin-Woo barely had time to process what was happening before Vulcan, with eyes red like blood, charged towards him. Boom, boom. Each step Vulcan took made the ground shake violently. Jin-Woo quickly looked back over his shoulder. The battle between Vulcan's monsters and Shadow Warriors raged behind Jin-Woo with loud roars and clashes.
Hear the sound.
Garov? Kree. He scanned the chaos for Iron. But Vulcan's powerful hits had slowed down Iron's healing. Iron.
Jin-Woo shouted.
Iron quickly tossed his shield to Jin-Woo, who caught it mid-spin. But when he turned around, Vulcan was already right there. Jin-Woo knew if he didn't block Vulcan's attack, his soldiers would get hurt. He couldn't defeat Vulcan and all its minions without them, so he raised the shield to protect them as best as he could. Jin-Woo gripped his shield tightly and stood firm, ready for the attack. The ground shook as Vulcan swung its club down again. Bam! 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 Jin-Woo couldn't catch a single breath, but he stayed cool and steady. His high stamina and strong defense made it possible to withstand the onslaught. Vulcan's face twisted in rage when Jin-Woo's hit had no effect. The blows got even heavier, shaking the ground with each strike. Bam! 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 Jin-Woo's knees bent under the pressure, but he didn't fall. He knew Vulcan was tough. It would take more than this to win the fight. Jin-Woo frowned, his eyebrows squeezing together tightly. He had two powerful skills, Cerberus's Rage, which was super strong but only lasted a short time, and Vulcan's Rage, which wasn't as strong but didn't stop. This meant Jin-Woo could stay in this state for as long as he needed, though he wasn't sure how long that would be. Bang, bang. The sound of Vulcan's club hitting his shield echoed through the air. Jin-Woo clenched his teeth tightly, enduring each hit without flinching. My fighting style isn't really about standing back and letting others attack, Jin-Woo thought to himself. Bang! As Vulcan pulled his club back and got ready to swing again, Jin-Woo saw his chance. With a burst of speed, he jumped right at Vulcan's head, ready with a counter-attack. But guess what? He wasn't the only one lying in wait. Vulcan leaned back just as Jin-Woo jumped. What the? Out of nowhere, the club came swinging at Jin-Woo from the side. He realized too late that he'd been tricked. His hands had nothing to grab, and his feet had nowhere to land. He was stuck in midair with no escape from the attack. Jin-Woo's eyes widened as the club hurtled toward him. Even if he managed to block it, he had no clue where he'd land after the hit. His mind raced frantically. Is there any way I can escape? Is there anything I can do? In what felt like slow motion. Jin-Woo watched as the club loomed closer and closer. Panic set in. If only I could move. If only I could get out of the way. Then, like a flash of lightning, an idea struck him. His body tensed, ready to act on his sudden inspiration. No time for calculations. Jin-Woo quickly used Ruler's hand to push Vulcan. But of course, Vulcan was way too big for Ruler's hand to move. Instead, Jin-Woo got shoved backward. Whip. The club barely missed him. Close call. Jin-Woo tumbled to the ground but managed to land safely-ish. Phew. He scrambled to his feet, relieved. Vulcan, on the other hand, looked anything but happy, his face twisted with anger. Jin-Woo was getting annoyed because his finishing move wasn't working. This isn't going well, he muttered to himself. He watched as Vulcan's face turned bright red with anger. Jin-Woo frowned, unsure of what to do next. Vulcan could easily dodge his head-on attacks, and it seemed like hitting anywhere but its head wouldn't cause enough damage because of all the thick flesh covering its body. I need a way to catch it off guard, so it can't escape. Jin-Woo thought. Then, out of nowhere, a clever idea popped into his mind. A sly grin spread across his face. He turned around and took off running. Vulcan thought he was trying to escape and chased after him. Thump 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 thump. Thump 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 thump. Thump thump. Thump thump. There it was. Meanwhile, Vulcan finally caught up, swinging its big club in the air. This creepy crawly creature had been waiting for the perfect moment to smash that pesky Jin-Woo once and for all. A mischievous grin spread wide across Vulcan's face just as it was about to swing its club. But then out of nowhere, that annoying bug creature suddenly zoomed off and started climbing up the side of a crumbling wall. Vulcan's eyes narrowed in confusion. Something didn't feel right. Before it could react, the little pest had already scampered up to eye level. Then, with one powerful kick, the creature sent cracks spider-webbing across the wall. Vulcan watched in surprise as those cracks spread everywhere. And then, faster than anything Vulcan had ever seen before, the bug creature shot straight toward it. The demon's eyes went wide with shock. Jin-Woo smirked confidently at Vulcan. With a swift swing of Barca's dagger, he sliced through a bulging vein in Vulcan's neck. Blood shot out with a sharp shock, creating a fountain so strong it could fill an entire body. Another intense burst followed with a loud fesh. Vulcan dropped its club and frantically grabbed its neck, but the blood kept flowing unstoppable. Vulcan's eyes widened in panic. Jin-Woo was already on the creature's back, slashing furiously with his two daggers. One hit isn't enough, he muttered, pulling out the blades and striking again. Fatal strike. The daggers slammed into Vulcan's neck once more with a sharp thwip. Thwip. Finally Jin-Woo got the message he'd been waiting for.
We did.
Thwip. You have defeated avaricious Vulcan, Lord of the Lower Floors. You have gained 50,000 experience points. All demon souls in Vulcan's stomach have been freed. You have collected 72 demon souls. You have leveled up. You have leveled up again. Boom. Vulcan stumbled and collapsed to the ground. Jin-Woo stepped out of the dusty air, looking around to see what was happening. He planned to join his soldiers, but it seemed they were almost done too. Owl screech. Chop chop. Screech. Thanks to his soldiers' sharp sword skills, Vulcan's minions were disappearing fast. Jin-Woo checked out the stats window to see how things were going. His strength and agility were through the roof, and his level was climbing fast. Jin-Woo was ready for action. His stamina and mana were maxed out since he'd just leveled up, with more than enough mana to go around. His shadow soldiers didn't really need his help. As long as he kept his mana up, those soldiers were practically unkillable. It was the ultimate power of controlling an undead army. Jin-Woo decided to let his troops finish off the last few demons, while he gathered loot. While his shadow soldiers handled the remaining demons, Jin-Woo collected the spoils of battle. It felt like unwrapping presents on his birthday. When Jin-Woo saw Vulcan's lifeless body, a sly grin spread across his face. What awesome loot would he score this time? A few twinkling lights appeared above the corpse. As soon as Jin-Woo touched them, a message popped up. You have discovered item, Demon Monarch's earrings. Would you like to acquire it? You have discovered item, Sphere of Avarice. That notifications made him feel like he'd hit the jackpot. Want to grab them? You found 2 items. Want to pick them up? And look, there's a material item called World Tree Fragment. Want that too? No surprise, Jin-Woo felt something good was coming, even before fighting Vulcan. Turns out, the loot was awesome. He couldn't stop grinning as he checked his haul. The Vulcan's horns are probably just for selling or crafting, like demon horns. But hey, there was one big prize that really caught his eye, the World Tree Fragment. It felt super special, and Jin-Woo had a feeling it might be worth more than gold. What's a material item? Should he grab them all? Jin-Woo was super curious because these items were completely new to him. He couldn't check their details unless he acquired one first. So he decided to take everything. Except all, he said. In an instant, the glowing lights turned into actual objects and landed at his feet. There was a pair of gleaming earrings, a mysterious red sphere, and a huge chunk of wood, as big as a grown woman. Jin-Woo couldn't wait to figure out what these items were for. Jin-Woo knew right away which piece was the World Tree Fragment. As soon as he looked at it, the item's details popped up in front of him. Material, item, World Tree Fragment, acquisition difficulty, category, material. This special wood came from Vulcan's massive club, which was crafted from a branch of the legendary World Tree. The World Tree's wood is super powerful and full of magic, making it perfect for creating high-level magic tools. Jin-Woo wondered what awesome things he could make with it. But that's all the info he got. He hoped this fragment would lead to something epic. But he had definitely found something amazing. He could feel a powerful energy coming from it, even when standing near it. I'm not sure what the best use of this would be, so he decided to send the World Tree Fragment straight to his inventory rather than selling it at the shop. After that, he checked out the details for the other items, one by one. Unbiased Demon Monarch's earrings. Opwa's acquisition difficulty. S category. Accessories strength +20. Stamina +20. When worn together with the Demon Monarch's necklace and Demon Monarch's ring, you'll unlock a special bonus. Set buff 1. The Demon Monarch's earrings worked in a similar way to the A-rank Warden's collar, but they also had some extra hidden bonuses when worn together. Even without those extras, they were awesome, boosting both strength and stamina by 20 points each. Since I get 5 ability points every time I level up, this was like gaining the equivalent of 8 more levels. Jin-Woo snatched the earrings with a grin. A message popped up. Would you like to put on item? Demon Monarch's earrings. He nodded, and just like before, the earrings vanished. But this time he could feel a cool power boost. Jin-Woo beamed at his new, improved stats. These must be part of a set, he thought. The Demon Monarch's accessories. There must be more of them somewhere. The name gave him a hint. They were probably hidden inside the spooky demon's castle. Time to go on a treasure hunt. Jin-Woo couldn't stop wondering what awesome powers the full set might have. Even with just one piece in hand, Jin-Woo's excitement was through the roof, but Jin-Woo's grin didn't stay for long. What the f? He stared at the item in front of him. It was an orb called the Sphere of Avarice. The description said, it was ranked A, for how hard it is to get, and was a magical tool made from the solidified blood of the archdemon Vulcan. It also mentioned that it supercharges magic effects and causes more damage. But here's the kicker. There was a buff called Appetite for Destruction, which makes your spells hit twice as hard. The orb was about the size of a billiard ball, glowing red in his hand. Jin-Woo's eyes widened as he realized just how powerful this little thing was. Jin-Woo held the Sphere of Avarice in his hand, but when he checked his stats, nothing had changed. He looked at his job-exclusive skills, still no difference in how many shadows he could extract or store. Maybe I can't use it, Jin-Woo wondered. doubling magic damage was an awesome buff. Magic boosting tools were super pricey, so only a handful of mage hunters could afford them. But Jin-Woo had never even heard of a tool that could double the magic output, no matter how much it cost. If something like that existed, everyone would be talking about it, and Jin-Woo would have definitely heard the news by now. So, according to the description, the sphere of avarice, or whatever, could double magic damage. But Jin-Woo didn't really care. If he couldn't use it, what was the point? Honestly, it kinda bummed him out. If all this thing did was double magic damage, and nothing else, it didn't even matter to him. His powers weren't about dealing damage like that, more about controlling shadows and stuff. None of his skills had anything to do with magic anyway, so yeah, this item was basically useless for Jin-Woo. Jin-Woo casually tossed the sphere of avarice into the air, and caught it with a sigh. He couldn't help but think it would have been way cooler if he'd gotten something to make him smarter instead. His shadowy minions returned one by one, finishing their tasks. Igris was the first to arrive, grinning as he held up 6 demon heads, 3 in each hand. Jin-Woo stared at the towering figure kneeling before him, and scratched his head, clearly frustrated. Really? Jin-Woo groaned, eyeing the gruesome trophies. This is all you brought back? Can you knock that off? Jin-Woo asked, though he knew Igris wouldn't answer. Igris kept his head bowed low in respect, because when you do that, Jin-Woo glanced at Iron, who had cut off Vulcan's head, and was now dragging it back to offer to him. Look, he copies you. Jin-Woo had been the one who'd actually killed Vulcan, after all. The hunter let out a deep sigh as he stared at Iron. Then a clever thought struck him. Could my soldiers use the sphere of avarice just like I used Iron's shield? Just then, Jin-Woo noticed something else. The mage soldiers were moving much slower than the knights and infantry. They were trailing behind the other soldiers. Jin-Woo motioned for the first mage to come over. The mage, whose black robes were inside out, tripped as he hurried toward Jin-Woo. Realizing it would take too long for the mage to reach him, Jin-Woo decided to go instead. He walked up to the mage and handed him the sphere. He pointed to the same building he had scaled earlier. With a flick of his hand, the shadow soldiers sprang into action. He didn't need to say a word, they knew exactly what to do. He gave a quick signal, and the mage shouted, "Fire!" In an instant, massive fireballs twice as big as usual appeared in the mage's raised hands. Jin-Woo's eyes nearly popped out of his head. Before he could even react, one of the fireballs blasted off toward the building. Tuss. Which? Tuss. Cuss. Us. 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 Cuss. Us. 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 The fireball turned the building into a pile of ashes in an instant. It was as if the whole thing had been made of paper. The building was gone, but the fire kept roaring. The flames crackled and popped with fierce energy. Jin-Woo watched the fire with a grin while quickly taking back the glowing sphere of avarice from his minion. He studied its description carefully, his eyes scanning every word. But as he read it again and again, Jin-Woo scratched his head in confusion. It didn't say anything about not being able to give it to someone else. Could he actually sell this to someone else? Jin-Woo gulped and swallowed hard, his eyes fixed on the burning building. Fu whoosh! Another chunk of the structure came crashing down, roaring like thunder. As it fell, Jin-Woo couldn't help but grin as flames shot into the air. Mage hunters would totally freak out over this, right? Earlier he'd been disappointed, but now excitement sparked in his eyes. It was a sunny afternoon. The young guy from 92, a middle-aged woman, asked again, sounding a bit puzzled. He hasn't shown up in days, Kachul said, shaking his head. Got it. Thanks for letting me know, she replied, and Kachul bowed before her. He'd been staking out near Hunter Sung's apartment building for 3 whole days now, waiting to catch a glimpse of Jin-Woo. But no luck. Every day he brought his homemade vegetable juice, only to end up drinking it all by himself. Kachul let out a deep sigh and pulled out his phone. He dialed the number and waited as it rang. Hey, Kachul! A voice answered after a few rings. Manager N. It was Sangmin on the other end. No sign of Hunter Jin-Woo Sung. Sir, Sangmin reported. Sangmin's phone buzzed. His neighbors say they haven't seen him in a while, a voice said on the other end.
Really?
Sangmin replied, leaning back in his chair. Yes, sir. The voice was firm but flat. There's nothing we can do. Then, just come straight to the office starting tomorrow. Understood. The line went dead. Sangmin set the phone down and frowned. Where had Jin-Woo gone? For days now, Sangmin hadn't heard a peep from him. No calls, no messages, nothing. It was like he'd vanished into thin air. Sangmin scratched his head, trying to piece it all together. Something about this didn't sit right. Jin-Woo wasn't the type to just disappear without a clue. Had something happened? Or had he simply ghosted everyone? Sangmin had asked Kachul to check on his apartment, just in case the hunter was avoiding his calls. But Kachul hadn't been spotted there either. Suddenly Sangmin worried that something might have happened to him. Do I even need to worry about him?
He thought. Either way, he felt uneasy.
Then, someone tapped him on the shoulder. He turned around to see Heejin standing there. Seems like he told his sister he was going on a trip with a friend for a week. Heejin said. Are you talking about Hunter Sung? Sangmin asked.
Yes. Then.
That means he's nowhere to be found. Sangmin replied. Heejin's eyes widened in confusion. Huh? Sangmin quickly explained the situation. Naturally there are no records of him leaving the country. He said, and there hasn't been any activity on his bank account or credit card for several days. You can check all that stuff, she asked, sounding impressed. It's my job to monitor hunters, after all, he replied with a shrug. Wow. Okay, she said, clearly surprised. And according to the association, he added, they last picked up his cell signal, right in the center of the city. 5 days have passed since Jin-Woo went missing. Isn't this mysterious? Someone asked. Heejin blurted out. Do you think he was kidnapped? The idea seemed laughable. Jin-Woo, the brave hunter who had conquered a high-level dungeon single-handedly, Sangmin scratched his head, and replied with a grin. Bringing Jin-Woo back would take nothing less than China's top special forces, Heejin agreed. Sangmin frowned thoughtfully. But how did you even know he left? Heejin shrugged casually. Sanji told me. We still talk. And she goes to the same school as Jin-Woo's sister. I just asked her to check in. Sangmin nodded slowly. I see. The conversation died there. Both of them were stuck on the same question. Where was he? Upstairs. Jin-Woo thought back to Avaricious Vulcan, the first boss monster he'd faced in the demon's castle. That guy had been a real challenge, huge, fiery, and relentless. Its title had been Lord of the Lower Floors. After the 50th floor, where it had been stationed, the level of difficulty drastically increased. Previously, he'd clear at least 10 floors, sometimes closer to 20, in a day, but that had slowed to the point where he found it challenging to clear even 7 or 8 a day. High-ranked demons were common on these floors, and he also occasionally ran into top-ranked demons, whose size alone set them worlds apart from those found on the lower floors. Shunk, a top-ranked demon, the size of a 2-story building, slowly fell to the ground with a dagger sticking out of its chest.
Pud.
You have defeated a top-ranked demon. You have acquired Fun and 1,900 experience points. You have acquired Fun and Demon Soul. Jin-Woo pulled Barca's dagger out of the dead demon's chest. That was the last one for this floor. Jin-Woo let out a breath, as another battle came to an end. His shadow soldiers closed in around him, their dark forms gathering like a living cloud. He scanned his troops, each one perfectly still yet, somehow looking worn out, which didn't make sense because undead warriors shouldn't get tired. Still, the monsters on these higher floors were no joke. At least this last fight had been smoother since no archdemons showed up. Each of those is basically a boss. And this wasn't just some wild theory, he knew it was true from experience.